My game's in early access on Steam, and up until now, this is what the menus look like. But since the game has Paper Mario inspired graphics, I thought it would be a real shame if there weren't any areas that took full advantage of the visuals, and so what I decided to do was make a hub world. This is a little sneak peek of what it looks like, and in this video, I'm going to cover everything we've done since I last uploaded the last Soulstalker devlog about a month ago. This includes all the features that I moved from the old menu system to the new hub, the new progression system that I added to take full advantage of the hub, a new job system to add replayability, more level variations, adding some Kickstarter backer content, and so much more. And near the end, I even talk a bit about the console ports of this game, and I'm also going to be announcing a new port for my other game, Wanted Shadows, so let's get started. Before I get into the hub stuff, I think you should know exactly how the menu system used to work so that you can get a direct comparison. So, when you launch the game, you were originally met with this screen, and it's quite basic, right? You can go to your achievements and check out what characters you had unlocked or what to do if you wanted to unlock them, and then you can also go back and go to the settings, pretty simple, and then if you wanted to start a run, you just clicked on the top button of the main menu, and now here's where you choose your character. You could also look up its stats and description and stuff like that, and then once you selected it, you were prompted to choose your starting weapon. After the starting weapon, you can choose your starting trinket, which is kind of like a passive item, and then finally, you got to the menu where you could start a run. Now the game works really differently. So when you launch the game, you start off in a menu like before, but you might notice something a bit different, right? Yeah, I mean, there's the character on the side, but if you press on continue, you don't get sent to another menu. Instead, the camera pans out and you can control the character in the hub, just like that. I'll show the rest of the hub in a second, but I also wanted to show you something really cool that we can now do since the menu is kind of, in world. So the different sub-menus can have different camera angles, and in the credit sub-menu, the camera points at the sky in a kind of cinematic way. So I thought that was really cool. Either way, I'll walk around the hub now and explain how all of the old systems are now implemented. So firstly, by default, the character that you have selected as your main run character also now runs around in the overworld, and now instead of changing it by going through a series of menus, you go to this little candle table and change it there. And you might also notice that if you don't have a character unlock, it shows you its achievement, right? So that screen from the old menu has been folded into this new one to make everything more compact. It's all in one now. And you might also be wondering how to change your weapons and trinkets, right? It's really important. Where you can just go to these store looking things now, and you can select them as usual and buy them too, right? But it's all in world, so much more well integrated with the game. And you might be wondering, how do you start a run, right? I haven't shown that yet, but first I want to show you how the NPCs work, because I haven't mentioned those and you see them everywhere in the hub. So you can talk to these little ghosts, and they either have funny quips, some lore, or sometimes they might even give you some tips that might help you in runs. And with the new progression system that I mentioned in the intro, as you play you'll find more, but I'll cover that in a second, because I'm sure all of you really want to know how you start a run. So you see this globe over here? Well, you just walk to it, okay? And then you get the prompt, as always. And that's it, right? It just shows the same screen as before, but you can just go right to it if you just want to repeat a run with the same characters, weapons, and trinkets as before. It's super easy, just one menu. But something that's new to the runs is that you see the ascension system on the bottom, which is how you increase your difficulty, and this interacts well with the new progression system that I just mentioned. Now, when you walk around the overworld in the new version of the game, you'll find some gates that don't allow you to pass unless you complete some quests. So in this one, for example, you have to complete the ones that you see on screen. And you might be thinking, it refers to jobs here, what the heck are jobs? I haven't talked about that, right? Well, I haven't explained them, and it's kind of a new way of doing runs. So usually, you choose your character, weapon, and trinket, as I mentioned before, and then you go ahead to the globe, right? Well, these long form runs are now called journeys. They're not just runs, they have a specific name, they're journeys. And so there's a different category of run now called jobs that you can go on if you open this job board that you might have seen while I was walking around. And so how it works is that you simply get 3 random configurations of runs. So 3 random combinations of character, trinket, and weapon, and a few other things as well. And unlike journeys, you can't choose what you start with. And the intention is to give players a way to get cool build combos and learn about the game's synergies without them having to fiddle around and make their own from the get-go. So it's just a way to really expedite the learning process and to get really used to the game. At first, how I made this system is that the game chose a random character that you've got unlocked, and then from there it would simply choose a random weapon and a random trinket, and it seems simple, right? This is how most people I think would approach the issue, but it actually worked really badly, and this is because of one of the main intentions of the job system. It's to nudge the players into new playstyles and builds that they may not know exist. So just randomizing everything was just way too chaotic, and you usually didn't get interesting build combinations. So in the end, I changed it into a system that made it such that the character is chosen for a job, and then since each character has a set of recommended weapons and trinkets, the chosen weapons and trinkets are kind of loosely based on that. Because it would be really boring if I just chose out of the recommended pool, right? Each character has about 5 recommended trinkets and weapons, so that would result in like 25 unique runs per character, which sounds good on paper, but in practice, that's actually quite a lot of repetition. So what the new system does is it decides whether to choose a recommended weapon or a recommended trinket. Then the other category will be picked out of the non-recommended pool. So if you get a recommended weapon, the trinket that the game serves you will be for the non-recommended pool, and then the same goes for the opposite. This allows every single possible weapon trinket combination to be picked while still keeping a semblance of structure to make the builds make sense. But there's also a small chance that the weapon and trinkets are either both recommended or both not recommended, but the probability of this is so small, and it's mostly just to inject more variety. And so, before I said that you had 25 possible combinations per character with the boring approach, but this new approach actually has 1,472, and since the game has 15 characters, that's already 22,080 possible builds just from the starting screen. So that's definitely a huge improvement, and it's great that the chaos was contained as well. There's more to this though, because apart from the weapons and trinkets, the difficulty is also randomized, and this is done according to what ascensions you've already beaten in the main runs, so the journeys, right? So how do you unlock these difficulties though? Well, you have to beat a journey at your target difficulty, so if you beat an Ascension 1 journey, then you unlock Ascension 2 journeys, but also jobs. So tying this back all to the gates, that's how you unlock them. And so the final gameplay loop ends up looking a bit like this. So first, you try to beat a journey with the difficulty of the gate that you're trying to unlock. And after that, you try to beat the jobs of that difficulty because you've unlocked the difficulty for the jobs. And in doing that, you learn a bunch of new builds through the randomized job start. So it's a great way of onboarding new players. After that, you manage to unlock the gate, get a reward, which I'll get to after, and repeat this again for the next gate with your expanded knowledge of the game and the unlocks that you've gotten along the way. Then you repeat that with the new gates, and that's the progression system. And the progression system in general is something that players have complained about since they feel that the game is a bit too purist, so this is a good middle ground where those players have something to work towards, but if you just want to do runs and climb ascensions just like before, you can do that as well. And since the jobs are shorter runs than the old journeys, they can also do those if they just want to have a more chill time without as much preparation. But you might be asking yourself, how exactly are jobs shorter than journeys? I haven't really covered that, right? And so the reason is that journeys are 2 acts long at the moment, but in some early access update, I'll make them 3 acts long, and then jobs can only be between 1 and 2 acts long. And speaking of Act 3, we've been working on some of that, and I wanted to show you the first draft of the environment of the combats for it. It's going to be a shorter act than most because I don't want runs to go for longer than 25 to 30 minutes, but I still want to make it impactful, and the visuals have to match that. And speaking of visuals, something I haven't mentioned is that the jobs can have locations. And basically what I've done is that unlike main runs that have varied thematics, so maybe you have like a snow level at first, and then you get a poison level, a lava level, and so on, jobs all have a consistent theme. So let me give you some examples. A job in the Terrace Story location will have all icy areas. A job in Root Toxin will have all poisonous areas, or a job in Dust Turf will have all dusty and deserty areas. And so far, I've added 8 new areas, and the game previously had 12, so it's really quite a jump already, and I'll be adding even more before this update even goes live. The locations also affect what kind of enemies you get shown, so you might get some cool penguin enemies in the ice area, and some helmet dust enemies in the desert area. And beyond all of the work that I've already mentioned in this devlog, I've also added some more Kickstarter related content this month. And so one of those is a new character that you can see on screen now, and then also a new enemy that's going to be an Act 3 enemy. So that's going to be really cool, and I'll cover it in a future devlog when we do Act 3. And the last and coolest thing that I added for the Kickstarter this month is one of the coolest features that backers could pledge for, and that is getting their name on a tombstone. And originally these tombstones were going to be drops in the level, kind of like a chest in other games in this genre, but since this update has added the hub, it just made so much more sense to make them appear here instead. Another thing that we added this month that doesn't really neatly fit into a category is that Tim, our artist, made outline-less versions for all the characters in the game. So some of you have complained that you don't like the Paper Mario sticker star styled white outline, so in the hub that's always off by default, and we're thinking about maybe adding an option for the combats that you can choose between the white outline and no outline at all, and this is kind of the comparison of the two. I'd love to hear in the comments which one you prefer for the default. And finally, this is the moment that so many of you have been waiting for in this devlog, and it's the part where I talk about the process of the console ports of the game. But before that, I wanted to announce another porting related piece of news from my other game, Wanted Shadows. And so this is the game in the same genre as Soul Stalker, but it's so much more focused on action combat, so it has a differentiator there, and it has this cool Octopath Traveler styled art style. It costs just $149 on Steam, and if you get it together with Soul Stalker, which by the way also only costs like about $5 on Steam and is on discount right now with the autumn sale. But yeah, if you get them both together, you can get them for even cheaper, so check the link out in the description. I'm digressing a bit, but the Wanted Shadows related news is that, drumroll please, okay? Drumroll. It's coming to mobile! Yes, so you can pre-download it already in the link in the description, and we're working with Crescent Moon Games, who's done my other mobile games, and I actually used to freelance for them as a game designer when I first started out, so we have some nice history there. So yeah, it'll come out in January of 2024, so in a bit over a month, and I can't wait for all of you to try it out. The game's a great fit for mobile, and I think it's particularly fresh for the genre on the platform due to how many things we do differently. Anyways, back to Soul Stalker, and if you've been following this devlog series and my other socials, you know that we partnered up with Tim from Origami Panda, who used to be a senior software engineer at Unity actually, and he's doing the Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox ports. And I'm happy to announce that we're making super awesome progress, and we're still on track to release the console versions in the first half of 2024. And I'll let you all know when there's a more concrete date, but for now, the priority is getting early access done properly. And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you pre-downloaded Wanted Shadows on mobile and also got the bundle with both Soul Stalker and Wanted Shadows, or even just the games individually if you just want to get one. The links to all these things are in the description, and that's it for this video, and I'll see you all for the next one next week.